Why does the father sprint down the road to greet the son who wasted his money but never once walks outside to invite the son who stayed home and did everything right? Most people watch this parable and walk away thinking the whole point centers on a rebellious kid who blows his inheritance and crawls home in shame. Wrong focus. The real target of this story never leaves the house, and the ending catches almost every reader off guard. By the finish of this video, you will see exactly who Jesus built this parable around and why the story stops before you get a clean resolution. Once you see this shift, you will never read this story the same way again. This parable sits in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. Luke wrote his gospel for a mixed group of Jewish and Gentile readers, somewhere around 60 AD, decades after Jesus walked the earth. Right before this parable, tax collectors and sinners gather around Jesus to listen, and the religious leaders start grumbling about the company Jesus keeps. Jesus answers the complaint with 3 stories in a row: a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son. The story runs the longest and carries the sharpest twist of the 3. The word prodigal never even shows up in the Bible text. This label comes from later readers and simply means recklessly wasteful, describing how the younger son spends his cash, not where he travels. In the sheep story, a shepherd searches for one missing animal out of 100. In the coin story, a woman sweeps her whole house for one missing coin. Both stories end with a celebration among friends and neighbors. The story repeats the same pattern of loss and celebration, then adds something new, a second character who refuses to walk into the party. Here comes the setup. A father raises 2 sons. The younger son approaches his father and asks for his share of the inheritance while the father still lives. In this culture, this request insults the father directly. Asking for your inheritance early tells your father you wish him dead already. Still, the father divides his property between the 2 sons without a single word of protest. Jewish inheritance law recorded in Deuteronomy chapter 21 gives the older son a double portion of the estate. With 2 sons in this family, the younger son walks away with roughly 1/3 of everything the father owns. He converts this land and goods into cash right away, since carrying property across a border makes no practical sense for a young man heading somewhere new. The younger son packs his bags, travels to a distant country, and spends the entire fortune on reckless living. Then a famine strikes the region, and his money runs out at the worst possible moment. The distant country likely means Gentile territory outside Jewish land, since a Jewish audience in this period rarely traveled this far from home for casual reasons. Hungry and broke, the son takes a job feeding pigs, an animal Leviticus chapter 11 labels unclean for Jewish people. This job marks the lowest possible position available to a Jewish man in this culture. Hunger drives him so low, he wants to eat the food meant for the pigs, and nobody gives him a single scrap. This moment marks the lowest point of the whole story. The son who once demanded independence now works a pig pen, starving and ashamed. Luke 17 says the son comes to himself, meaning he finally sees his situation clearly. He rehearses a speech in his head: "I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to get called your son. Treat me like one of your hired workers." The plan sounds humble on the surface. Watch what happens next. While the son still practices his apology on the road home, the father spots him from far away. This detail carries weight. The father must have scanned the road every single day, hoping for this exact moment. Luke 20 says, the father runs toward him, wraps him in a hug, and kisses him. Grown men in this culture never ran in public. Running meant lifting your robe and exposing your legs, an act considered shameful for a man of the father's age and status. The father humiliates himself in front of the whole town to reach his son before the son finishes the apology. The son barely gets 3 words into his rehearsed speech before the father cuts him off with orders. Bring the best robe in the house. Put a ring on his finger. Put sandals on his feet. Kill the fattened calf. The family raises this calf for one purpose only, a massive celebration. So killing the calf signals the biggest party this household has thrown in years. The father wants celebration, not probation. He wants a party, not a punishment. Each object on this list carries a specific meaning. The robe marks honor and status in front of the entire household staff. The ring works as a signet ring, used to stamp the family seal on official documents, a sign of restored authority, not simple affection. The sandals matter the most, since servants in this household go barefoot while sons wear shoes. Putting shoes on this son announces to every worker watching, this man returns as a son, not a servant, no matter what speech he rehearsed on the road home. Meanwhile, the older son finishes a full day of work in the field and walks home to the sound of music and dancing. News like this travels fast through a small village, so neighbors likely already know the whole story before the older son reaches his own front door. He asks a servant what happens and learns his brother came home safe, so the father throws a party. The older son refuses to walk inside. He plants himself outside, arms folded, while the celebration continues without him. The father leaves his own party and walks outside to plead with his older son directly. The son fires back with years of resentment. "I have served you for years. I never once disobeyed an order. You never gave me so much as a young goat to celebrate with my friends. But this son of yours, who burned through your money on prostitutes, comes home, and you killed a fattened calf for him." A young goat costs a small fraction of a fattened calf in this economy, so the size of this complaint reveals how closely the older son tracks every transaction between himself and his father. Here comes the piece most viewers miss completely. Jesus told this parable to answer the exact complaint the religious leaders raised at the start of the chapter. The younger son represents the sinners and tax collectors who gather around Jesus. The older son represents the religious leaders, people who follow every rule on paper yet resent grace handed to someone else. The parable does not center on the runaway son at all. The parable centers on the response of the son who stayed home the whole time. Think about a workplace example for a second. Picture an employee who shows up early every day, follows every policy, and never causes trouble. Now picture a coworker who misses deadlines, breaks rules, and causes real damage to a project. This coworker faces a light consequence and gets welcomed back warmly after a rough stretch. The rule-following employees feels the sting of unfairness immediately. This same pattern shows up outside a workplace too. A parent celebrates a child who finally shows up for a holiday dinner after years of distance, while a sibling who shows up every single year quietly resents the extra attention given to the one who almost skipped the meal entirely. This exact scene sits at the center of the parable. The father loves both sons equally, but only one son struggles to accept love he never earned. People often ask one question first. Does this parable excuse the younger son's bad choices? No. The famine, the poverty, the pig pen, every consequence stays real and painful. Grace never erases consequences. Grace changes what happens after a person hits the lowest point available to hit. A second question comes up almost as often. Why does the story end without telling you whether the older son ever walks through the door? Luke leaves this ending open on purpose. Jesus aims this question straight at the religious leaders sitting in the room, listening in real time. The open ending forces the original audience, and every reader since, to answer the question personally, without a script to follow. A third question comes up often too. Does the father play favorites toward the younger son? Read verse 31 closely. The father tells the older son, "Everything I own already belongs to you." The older son held full access to the father's wealth this entire time. Every single day he works the field. His resentment grows from a misunderstanding of his own position, not from real neglect on his father's part. So here comes the plain answer to the question from the start of this video. This parable never centers on a wandering son who messes up and comes home. This parable centers on a father who runs toward shame to offer welcome, and an older brother who struggles to walk through the door of grace held open for him. The real question the story asks lands on you directly. Grace rarely bothers you when the gift lands in your own hands. Grace bothers you the moment someone else receives the same gift without paying the price you paid. Which brother do you resemble today? Read Luke chapter 15 yourself this week, start to finish, before the next lesson goes live. Drop one honest answer in the comments below. Have you ever felt more like the older brother than the younger one? Subscribe for next week's lesson. where we walk through the parable of the unforgiving servant and why forgiveness costs far more than most people expect going in, especially once real money enters the conversation.